Hi, I'm Marsha Florence, your host of the show, Just Ask. Please hurry back so we can enjoy our guest, Marcias Bio, President of Personability. See you in a minute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
We pledged our allegiance to it when we were young.
The flag was still there.
We studied its importance when we were in our teens.
He saw the flag.
We sing its praises at every sporting event. We display it when we celebrate.
Present. Huh.
Lower it when we mourn.
Our flag is presented on behalf of a grateful nation.
And honor our heroes with it when they've fallen. The flag of the United States of America. It stands for what we are and what we believe in. How we treat it says a lot about us.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. We have a special guest in our audience today, which we always have a special guest. We have Marcias Bio, who is the president of Personability. Marcia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. Marcia, we usually open up with our famous question, but at this point, since you are the president of a company, we'd like to know something about the company. So starting off with the company, can you give us a little brief history of Personability?
Yes, it's a company that's approximately about a year old, and we provide services. One of the main target groups is for people with disabilities. We provide individual counseling, we provide peer counseling, life skills training, so that people can begin to decide how to live independently. We provide services such as ADA consultation, which is the Americans with Disability Act, to help people understand their rights. And we look at some services with career and vocational. We have a grant with Wayne State University looking at women with disabilities from minority groups and thinking in terms of their vocational and educational opportunities, that they're getting the supports that they need so that they can do and be the things that they want to be.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Now, the population that you work with of disabled groups, what type, is there any particular type of disabled persons?
No, I really look at cross-disability. I think disability is, we all share something together, whether you have a cognitive disability or a physical disability. Maybe some of our issues are different, but that we have much more power as we work together and that we can learn from one another. So we really are cross-disability. And our whole philosophy really is how to empower people to be all that they can be, to maximize themselves.
To help our audience out, when you say cross-disability, is that something like multiple disabilities in one person, or what is considered a cross-disability?
Well, it could be multiple disabilities in one, but it's really not the hierarchical structure that exists, such as a person like myself who has a physical disability, or someone who has a cognitive disability, or someone who has an emotional disability. But that people have different varying degrees of disabilities. You could have two people with the same disability, but because of who they are and their life experiences, they respond and their experiences are different. So no two people, even though they have disabilities, are exactly the same.
So your company's name, Personability, how did that name come about? It's a very nice and catchy name.
Well, we really tried to think about what made sense, and we began to think about personability. It maximizes, our little slogan is maximizing individual and organizational potential, because we also work with organizations and helping to look at just general abilities within their organization, helping them in thinking about issues of people with disabilities. Making job accommodations, return to work. How does somebody that's had a stroke, how do we begin to get them back on the job so that they have their sense of contributing to society that everybody wants to do?
Does your staff consist of a lot of medical partnerships or counseling? What is your staff made up of?
The people that work with me primarily have been people, actually, I think everybody that we've employed thus far has been people with disabilities, with a variety of disabilities. I have one woman who does some work with me training who has cerebral palsy, and would be considered to have a little more severe disability. I have someone who has lupus, which is more of a hidden disability. People would not know that. Someone else who has post-traumatic stress disorder, someone else who has MD. So a variety of things, and as well as our partnerships in the community are with organizations that may be providing services to people with disabilities, but it also may be with organizations that don't, in educating and teaching and working with them, school districts, who obviously deal with kids with disabilities, but that's not their primary target. Their primary focus is education.
So basically, where does your referrals come from?
A variety of places it could come from. We do some work with Michigan Rehab Services. We have one actually stationed in one of their offices, and so those come right in at the office kind of thing. It could be somebody who's calling for professional counseling, peer counseling. It could be an HMO, a PPO. It could be someone who's just heard about us and has connected, and they call and ask for information, and then we see what services we could provide. We do a lot of work actually with some statewide agencies, such as the MESO, which is the Michigan Association for Centers for Independent Living. Okay. And we do some with the SILC, which is the Statewide Independent Living Council, and then Michigan Commission on Disability Concerns. So we work with a variety of state agencies also, and Michigan Jobs Commission, in looking at how do we deliver services throughout the state of Michigan for people with disabilities.
So how does one come connected to your company? I mean, to your program. Like, if I was a person coming in, I mean, how would I go about finding out information, or how would I go about joining, or?
Well, somebody would call, and we would kind of try to help understand what their service needs are, whether that was something we could certainly provide or not. If we could not, we would refer them out to another organization. And if we could, then we would begin that process, whatever it is, whether it was training skills that they needed, or to have a peer mentor, or whether it was professional counseling, whether it was to think about vocational issues, whichever particular issue that they needed to look at, we would begin to assess and kind of make referrals based on that.
Do you have any particular funding sources that help you out with your program at all, state and federal or something?
Well, the Wayne State program that we have, which is called Bridges, the project, that we're getting federal funds. Now, there is some discussion that those funds are going to be cut because the whole issue of women's educational equity is being cut. We're encouraging people to write their legislators and things as we begin to try to help women, move forward in their careers. We have a grant with Michigan's Rehab Services, which is state funding, and we've been, supported through that with that particular thing. Other things are fee-for-service. Sometimes Medicaid will reimburse for counseling, other kinds of things.
So a person with general medical costs can also be billed. I mean, like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, HAP, and all those. Would they chip in, or they?
Sometimes it depends on their particular plan and their particular coverage. Some of them do, and some of them absolutely don't. We try not to turn people away. We will refer them to another organization if we can't do it. Otherwise, we will work with people on ability to pay.
Now, is there any particular age group that you work with primarily, or?
Not in totality. We work with kids. We're hoping to do some leadership development for kids within school districts with disabilities. We work with adults. So it really does, that we're not limited by an age.
Okay. Now, Marcia, can you give us a little insight on your disability? Because most of the time, we always try to enlighten our viewers to understand that this show is dedicated to them, persons with disabilities and handicaps, so they'll understand that there is some form of assistance out here. We don't want to just air a show and say that we talk about what we have, but we want to encourage them to know that there is organizations or individuals or donors that do provide services or want to help. And so, we always try to talk about what we have as a person. So can you give us some insight on your disability?
Sure. I have something which we call OI, or osteogenesis imperfecta. It's a brittle bone disease. Mine is congenital, which means that I was born with 25 multiple fractures, actually. Some of them had healed during my mom's pregnancy, but my bones were so brittle that she needed to carry me around on a pillow. And of course, I wasn't supposed to walk. I wasn't supposed to do all these things that I've done. But I was pretty determined. And really, I tell people that the reason I'm successful, unfortunately, is because I grew up with not living up to society's expectations of myself, though. because people would say all the things you're not supposed to be able to do, not the things that we have done. And many of them are things that people that are quote-unquote able-bodied, we call people without a disability TABs, temporarily able-bodied, because the reality is no one knows when they may end up with a disability in their life.
Right.
And we really view disability as part of the human life experience.
Now that's something that quite a few of my guests and I have talked about. When you're born with a disability of any kind, when you come up with it, you still perform everyday tasks. You do everything as though anyone else would do. But there's always someone in the background, a physician or another family member or a friend or a neighbor saying, she's not supposed to do that. She's, I'm surprised they're doing that. Must be a miracle and this and that. It's not a miracle. It's just a way of life. If no one told you you had a disability, you would just be another person, you know, performing a daily task. But someone always seems to bring it to your attention, you know, bring it to the person's attention. Do you know that you have a disability, or how do you do that? And as far as a kid is concerned, this is what he or she does every day. And so to me, over the history, people have a habit of always trying to make a person with a disability aware that they have a disability. We already know, you know, so.
I think there's, and part of it is because if you look at history of disability, people have really come out of the medical model, which says, again, we fix you. I don't necessarily look at disability that way. I look at disability as it's a part of who I am. It's just like I have reddish blonde hair, I also have a disability. It's one piece of who I am that helps me to look at the world in the fashion that I do. It's not a good or a bad. Does it mean that I might need different supports than someone else in my life? Yeah. But it's kind of like a palm tree that grows amongst a bunch of evergreens. One has more leaves than others, but is one better or less than the other? No. We all have our contributions and our gifts to bring. And I think that helping people to really identify that part of who they are and what skills they have to bring. And you know, it's not, if someone could wave a magic wand over me and say, I'll let you be a person with that disability, I'd say no. But what I would say is I'd like attitudes to be different, and I would like the environment to be more friendly so that it's not as difficult to reach something. It's not as, you know, people that are in chairs don't have to come to a building and not be able to get in the building. You don't have to think about when you go to vote that for me, I have to do absentee ballot even though I go to the voting precinct because my district doesn't have an accommodation, or I can have somebody else come in with me, which is like, nobody else does that, why should I?
Right, right. Well, that was a good way to put it, Marcia. I have to agree with you on that. I think if society was more aware and sensitive in a positive sense instead of a negative sense, we would all be, you know, treated equal. Disabilities and handicaps are one of the, to me, considered prejudicial issues we have, and it's surprising how we go from race to disability, creed, religion. We just go from one extreme to another, you know, and we don't never know when the day is going to come when prejudice is going to end in this sense. But it surely would be nice if it did.
One of the things that's important, I think, is that disability crosses every group of people in this country.
No matter what the race.
And it's really the largest minority group in the country. It's larger than any of the ethnic groups, but we haven't tended to pull it together yet.
Right. We're going to take a small commercial break here, and we'll be right back with our special guest, Marcias Bio of Personability. Be right back in a moment.
Today, all around you, there are extraordinary people doing the most ordinary things. Spending time with their kids. Breaking a sweat at the gym. Finding something tasty to make for dinner. Living their lives. And while they have to put more effort into it than most of us, and more time, and a larger amount of will, you won't find them asking for sympathy. You won't find them asking for praise. Only for the chance to get up and do it all again tomorrow.
welcome back to the show. For those of you who are just tuning in, we want to introduce our guest, Marcia Bain, president and co-founder of Personability. Marcia, we have a good conversation going here, but I want to just take a brief moment out and read a little bit of your bio here. It says you have a decade of experience, which I believe that, and you were inaugurated in the National Hall of Fame for People with Disabilities and have received awards including the Exemplary Award from the National Network for Social Work Managers. And you're going to be a keynote speaker in Finland and will be doing a presentation in Hong Kong in August of '96.
Yes.
Jeez,
We're excited about that.
I can imagine so.
Yeah.
I can imagine so. So your presentation in Finland and Hong Kong will
really have been focused on disability issues and the model, and that there is another way, that people with disabilities can take control of their lives and live independent, full lives. Just planning a trip like that, obviously, and making sure that, I'm up to speed physically and lots of walking, and we've done some international travel, so we've had some experience with that, but you really have to think about those issues a little bit more with the disability.
Now, how do you feel about being inaugurated in the National Hall of Fame of People with Disabilities? I'm sure that was very, very powerful. And
it was certainly quite an honor. I had a couple of nominations that were made apparently on behalf of me, and there's only about 50, maybe 55 people in the country that have had that kind of an esteemed award. So certainly it was something that I feel very humbled to have had bestowed upon me.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I'm aware that there's a conference coming up. Can you give us some information on the conference?
Yes, it's an exciting conference which has taken more than a year of planning by many, many people, GM and Ford and Weight Watchers and Chryslers, Ameritech, small companies like myself, but people from all over the state of Michigan, and the President's Committee for the Employment of People with Disabilities out of Washington, D.C. have been diligently planning the 49th conference to be held here in Detroit, May 22nd to the 25th. And the whole focus of that really is to bring together business, industry, unions, laborers, people with disabilities to begin to look at the environment in which we are all dealing with, and how do we help people with disabilities become part of the workforce, and how do employers understand some of the issues. It's going to be an exciting opportunity. There has been major work in looking at issues of making the city more accessible, training all of the staff at the airport in sensitivity training, to all of the staff at the Westin, the transportation, MDOT and DDOT staff, so that they understand the needs and the issues of people with disabilities. It's been a major undertaking, and it's going to be exciting and fun. We're having one night where we're having the contours, and we're having a Motown night.
Okay.
So people are expecting Detroit to really take on a new look.
Now, this is the first time it's come to Michigan?
Yes, it's the 49th conference, and it's the first time it's being held and hosted here in Michigan. Okay. And it really is a very, very exciting opportunity.
Now, this is the 49th, is it ADA or?
No, it's the President's Committee on the Employment of People with Disabilities, which really came out of President Truman's regime to begin to pay attention to those issues, and to begin on a national level to look at those, information advocacy. And then certainly as the ADA got passed in 1990, that became another component of that. But the whole focus is really on employment opportunities and knowledge to both the business community and to people with disabilities. There will be conferences on multicultural issues. There will be conferences on workmen's comp, on labor issues, on all kinds of very exciting things. In fact, I'd like to at least let you know who some of the keynote speakers are going to be.
Wonderful.
Ron Drock, from the National Employment Director from the Disabled Veterans. Connie Binsfield, the Lieutenant Governor of Michigan. Dennis Archer, obviously. Richard Wagner, the Executive Vice President and President for GM North American Operations. John Sweeney, the President of the AFL-CIO. Tony Cabello, who's the Chairman of the President's Committee in Washington, D.C., who has been appointed by President Clinton, of course. And President Clinton has been invited. We haven't heard yet, so we don't know, but we're expecting a wonderful turnout. And I think there's been some secondary things that have happened because of this conference, such as changes, additional curb cuts for people, some issues around transportation in the city, so that when the conference really leaves us, life for people with disabilities in the city will be improved on some levels. It's a wonderful opportunity. There's been elevator changes, room changes in the major hotels down there to really think about what are we talking about when we talk about accommodations. People with disabilities have been at the forefront of helping to plan it. The key sponsor has been the Michigan Commission on Disability Concerns. And I'd like to make sure we give the number to people if they are interested.
We most definitely will. We'd like to encourage our listening audience and viewing audience to come and participate in this conference, and we will make sure at the end of the show that the number is given, and hopefully people can respond and get registered in time to enjoy themselves at this conference and learn something at this conference. And we here at Just Ask hope to attend, and we'll definitely try to, so that if possible we'll be there on location and get a chance to see some of these speakers and noteworthy persons, and bring it back to the station so people can actually get a chance to see what it's like to participate in such a program. That conference really sounds nice. It really does. I'm sure it's one worth the wait. And they picked the opportune time with the changes in the laws and everything taking place. This will be a benefit for all, mainly those with disabilities and handicaps, so that we can, we're trying to close the gap, or learn how to close the gap in communication with one another. And it would be most beneficial if we would attend such programs, regardless if you have a disability or not. This would be one of the better conferences to attend.
It's a real cost-effective mechanism for business and industry to understand and get training around accommodations, job accommodations, return to work kinds of programs, workman's comp. They are having some pre-conference activities around labor issues and job accommodations, so that I believe that I have no charge to those. So that it's really a wonderful opportunity for everyone in this area to really participate. We're anticipating more than 2,500 people to be at this conference, and so it's very exciting.
That's wonderful. Well, I hope the audience, gets the chance to participate as well as we will, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
And so the dates again are when?
May 22nd to the 24th, and the actual conference will be held at the Westin, and people will be ready.
I'm sure. I had a question I wanted to ask you, and it's, you probably primarily answered it before, but in what areas of society or work would you like to see some changes made, and what type?
I think it's really attitudinal and certainly environmental. I think that our greatest limitations really have become the limitations of others. In thinking about, we may do things differently. For example, this is not necessarily employment, but I have 2 small children. Certainly when my children were little, or even now, I don't pick my kids up and run with them. It's not very feasible. They're the same size as their mom. But am I a good parent? Absolutely. But does that mean that I'm not as good because I have a disability? No. So it's how we begin to think about the world. And I've seen people with very severe disabilities that are able to contribute and do many, many wonderful things that even people with disabilities don't even always understand. We still have that fight within our own group.
Right. And we do. We have it bad too. So, it seemed like we as people with disabilities wouldn't have that. I'm fully aware that I'm sure my audience sometimes wants to know, well, what is it that the host has that, makes me the host? But being hearing impaired all my life seems to always come to the forefront when people say you speak so well and your diction is clear and you understand, but yet they fail to realize when I do have a problem with obtaining the information. And I try to make myself accommodating as much as possible in the workforce, at home, environmental-wise, wherever. But I've always taken on the challenges as they come because this is all I know. So this is the way I was brought up, this is what I know, and this is how I am. And even when you have a disability, it varies from person to person. So being a person of a hearing impairment, I may not have some of the same limitations as some of my, colleagues, and they may feel like, but if you're hearing impaired, you shouldn't know this and you shouldn't understand that, and that's not true. It varies, but I think that people like myself and yourself, if we're mentors to the next generation of young people with disabilities, they'll have a better chance in society to overcome some of these stigmas.
Right.
You know, way much better than you and I have, and that's what I look forward to. And the children are enlightened by the fact that we come to them, or we go to their schools, or they see us in the paper. We just got a baseball player, the first deaf baseball player, which he's profoundly deaf, and he said he doesn't want to be recognized as the deaf baseball player, but by his name and the fact that he's a baseball player. And I think that was wonderful, you know. But we know in society that they're going to label him. You know, hopefully he can withstand it.
I think the key is that we normalize disability, that it's not something so separate and different. I mean, as we talk about even language and disability, we talk about a person first. We don't talk about someone who is wheelchair bound, but rather than that, they are a wheelchair user, because that's what they are. A wheelchair they're not bound to that wheelchair, they're liberated because of it. And I think the whole key when we think about developing mentors is really that we again begin to normalize the process. I said to somebody when I first went to college, I said, I surely didn't pick somebody with a disability to be my mentor because I wanted to be successful. Well, that's a real sad thing to say. Now I want that people have choices. Not that they have to choose someone with a disability, but that now they have choices. It's a normal process. We see those people just as we see people without disabilities in front of us.
Now, Marcia, in the closing of the show, could you tell me what are your life goals and accomplishments at this point?
The ones that have passed or the ones I hope to have?
The ones you hope to have, because we could tell you've done well. So the ones you hope to have.
Well, I actually hope to, I'm working on my doctoral degree in adult education. So someday I hope to have that behind me. And I hope to continue to do a lot of traveling. I'm hoping to do a book on successful women leaders with disabilities worldwide. That's what I hope my dissertation will be on. And to continue to make the company grow. And my passion is to really equalize the playing field for people of all types, so that people really can do and be what they want to be.
Well, Marcia, I'm sure my audience enjoyed you as well as I did, and we hope that you'll come back to the show. And like I said, we will air the numbers, your company number as well as the conference, date, time, and number. And thank you once again for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And once again, as I always say, and you should be used to this, people, if you know someone with a disability, don't be afraid to ask, just ask. I'm your host, Marcia Florence. Thank you.
If you or someone you know is disabled and would like to appear on Just Ask, please write to Just Ask, care of Booth Communications, 645 South Eaton, Birmingham, Michigan 48009.
If you would like more information regarding life skills training or other services, please contact Personability at 810-828-3121.
The beauty of saying thank you is you can do it in so many ways. A pat on the back, a smile, a bear hug is always nice. So for everyone who supported our United Way this year, this is a pat on the back, a big toothy smile, and a bear hug, all rolled into one, just for you. As one of our helping hands, you reached the people in our community who really needed help, and you touched us all. So seeing that you're just a little too far away to muss up your hair or pinch you on the cheek, we'll close without further ado with some heartfelt words from us to you. Let's go ahead and bring them up.